Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm the founder and CEO of TopCyberPro.com, Jim West, and today I have another great guest for you. And we're going to have a great discussion about cybersecurity and different ways to get into cybersecurity. So I have May, and I want to make sure I get your last name. It's Brooks-Kempler.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. So I got it on
Perfect.
the first try. Well, May, I would like just you to introduce yourself, tell the people watching a little bit about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Perfect. So, as you said, May Brooks-Kempler, I've been in cybersecurity for over 20 years, got into it completely by chance, sort of had coffee with a colleague. He said, we're starting a new team doing information security. You want to join us? I was like, sure, that sounds great. But what's information security when it's at home? So basically, I had very limited background, mostly in networking and IT and product design and things like that. And I sort of pivoted towards cybersecurity, and that's been my passion ever since that missed coffee break. So that's what I've been doing. I've been doing multiple roles. I've started as a penetration tester, did cyber threat intelligence, at some point even moved to sales. Big mistake, but I did that as well. I did pre-sale, which I did enjoy, architecture, CISO roles. And in the last, I think, 8 years, I've had my own business doing mostly security awareness, starting as security awareness and professional services, and today focusing more on strategic cybersecurity leadership. I sit on a few advisory boards, on the board of directors for IC2, and that's about it, I think.
Wonderful. Well, that's a lot to unpack in that short amount of time. But what's interesting is just one chance coffee break set you on a whole new path in your career and life, and the industry is better for it. So I'm so glad you had that coffee break. When you were talking about the different hats and roles you wore, and you mentioned that you kind of already had some networking and IT background, cyber is one of those beautiful careers where I'm constantly telling people that you could start in one path, and at some point, if he's like, this isn't for me, you could easily pivot or lateral over to another path, or because there's so many branches and different roles within the cybersecurity industry. So if you start off learning hacking, pen testing, and doing kind of like network audits, and if you find out that's not really for you, you can switch over to, like GRC or privacy. There's other roles where there's more management focused roles, leadership. There's something for everybody in cyber, and that's what I really love about it. You mentioned that you serve on a lot of advisory boards, and so for people watching, kind of give them a kind of an insight into what is that like when you're serving on an advisory board.
Okay, so an advisory role is just like it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an advisory role. They don't have to take on my advice. And we have multiple advisors for every advisory board I'm on. There are a few advisors, and obviously each comes with their own background and ideals and ideas. And we're trying to help the company to go down the route that we think will be best for that business. Now, I only take on roles with companies that I truly believe in their either technology or vision, and I think they can make a positive impact, because I've been to a few, I talked to quite a few startups over the years that I said, okay, this is a great idea, this is great technology, but there is no pain point. No one will pay for it. No one will buy it. I mean, it's a great technology, but someone has to pay for it at the end of the day. So that's something that I try to steer away from. But usually we're looking at what's going on in the industry. Where do we think we can contribute more? And yesterday, well, I'm not sure I can say it yet, but one of my advisory companies, I actually built a presentation for a presentation that I have for a talk that I have in a couple of weeks. And I tackled a problem, and I had a conversation with the CEO, and I told him, look, this is a huge problem. And it's like, you're absolutely right. That is a huge problem. I wonder if we can do something about it. I'm like, I don't know, but I think if someone can, it's probably your startup. Went back to the team, and a couple of hours later, he said, well, we're working on it. You'll probably have it in the next couple of weeks. So, and that's incredible, because it's a huge problem pertaining to AI risks. I don't want to expose too much because they are working on it, and I don't know if it will work, but I think it will. And it's such a it's a big problem, but it's such a tiny adjustment for the product, and it can give such incredible benefits for customers, that I really love doing that.
You know, it's interesting when you're talking about, being and giving advice and recommendations. In cybersecurity, a lot of folks have to understand that recommendations and guidance is what we provide. We provide the information or course of action, and it's up for the stakeholders, the people that make the decisions to ultimately choose the direction they want to go in. And sometimes they go in a different direction than what you recommend. But you have to learn that you can't take it personally. I know some cyber professionals when they get into a role where they're in a first advisory role and trying to do the right thing from what they've learned and their knowledge and experience, and then to see the decision makers and they're like, why are they doing it that way? And they get frustrated because they want to internalize it. But I tell you, you got to build it, kind of like water off a duck's back. You got to move on to the next problem, the next focus, and keep, absorbing knowledge, because like right now, AI is the hotness. It's everywhere, and every organization is having conversations about it. And so it behooves everybody in cybersecurity that just because you got your certification, your degree years ago, and you got, 5, 10, 20 years experience, you should always be keeping the edge sharp with, continuing professional education. And just, again, the company's talking AI, you should go out there. LinkedIn and many other sites have free training on generative AI where you can, get knowledgeable about it so that when you are having the discussions with your stakeholders, you're somewhat knowledgeable in that. So I'm a huge advocate of continuing education naturally. You mentioned another board you sit on is ISC2 or ISC squared to a lot of folks in the
Yeah,
industry.
yeah.
It's a wonderful organization. I'm a huge their campaign. So if anyone watching this and you are thinking about getting into cyber, or if you're watching this video and you're in any other job, whether in the medical field or school teacher or just someone just working a basic office job, I behoove you and implore you to just Google certified in cybersecurity. So they have pledged 1 million vouchers for free training. So it's completely free. You just sign up with an email. You get access to free training, a free exam voucher, which is about $199 value, I believe,
Yeah.
non-member value. But it's a $200 value, free training, and a free certification. Most people that take my advice and go for that cert usually can study anywhere if they're already somewhat knowledgeable and experienced, maybe a weekend, 3-day weekend. Some other people usually take 1 week, 2 weeks max, but within 2 weeks or less, you could go through the free training, go schedule this exam, and get this credential under your belt. And again, you don't have to be necessarily in IT cyber to get this, because it's good knowledge for whatever role you have in any business you have, because it's always great to have some security knowledge with you in any career path, I believe. So a shout out to
Thank you
ISC
so much.
Squares Certified in
Thank
Cybersecurity Pro.
you. Thank you so much for this support, because I truly believe that this certification is for everyone. Yes, people starting out in this industry, absolutely. But I think that even leaders, C-level executive, board members, they need to understand cybersecurity risks. And what I love about the certified in cybersecurity is it's very general. You don't have to be a practitioner. Even if you've never seen a firewall in your life, that's fine. You'll never have to see a firewall in your life if you just want to have that background. And I think it's a fantastic certification. I'm a big advocate for certifications, not because of the certification itself, but because if I sit down and let's say I'll take a weekend and study, I don't know, generative AI. Great. So I'm saying that I know it, but how can you truly evaluate that? The fact that I claim that I know something. And if you have a certificate to go along with it, that means that someone else has already reviewed what I know and sort of put their stamp of approval on that. And that's why I think that a lot of people go for self-training and learn. And I'm all for that. Both my BA and my MBA are from the Open University. I'm doing now my DBA, my doctorate, also remotely. And thank you. And I love self-study. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a certificate or any sort of value to show for it, no one, why would anyone trust you? If I'll tell you, look, Jim, I trust me, I watched all the episodes of Grey's Anatomy. Would you trust me to operate on you? I'm guessing not so much. I'm guessing you want to see a certificate from the American Board of Surgery. I'm guessing, or another board
Or
of
if you
surgery.
stayed at a Holiday
Yeah.
Inn Express the night before the surgery, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point about certifications, and there's that constant debate, that we have in industry about, is it degrees, is it certifications, is it experience? And what I usually advocate, because I've been on a couple panels where I was at the Arizona Technology Summit a few years ago, and on the panel I had a couple of double PhDs on the panel, and I'm the one person on the panel. At that time, I had no degree. I just completed my WGU bachelor's. So shout out to WGU. They
Amazing.
have a wonderful program that has certifications built into their program. And so I can speak at least for their bachelor's program. If you go through the program, cold with no certifications, you'll end up with, I think, about 15 or 16 certifications when you're done, which is a good thing to start an industry with these certifications. And they have good content that they cover. So I speed run the course. I did it in 12 hours total time. And
Amazing.
so a lot of people on YouTube, you could Google speed run WGU degrees, and they did pretty much was the same formula. It works. But back to that conversation though about, degrees and certifications and experience, I advocate cyber is that one industry that there's multiple avenues in. There's not one
Oh yeah.
set pathway. A lot of folks will talk, oh yeah, just do hack the box or try hack me, do some pen testing courses, do you what I call YouTube University. There's great resources out there. Like I advocate for Professor Messer's Security Plus training. He's always current
Yeah.
and relevant, very easy to ingest material. And there's 100 others that are offering wonderful free content for everything from a Security Plus to CISP to even more specialized certifications. And in fact, like those ISC square concentrations, which recently they made a change. They used to be you had to have the CISP first as a
Yeah.
prerequisite before you could take one of the three, either architecture, management, or engineering concentration. Now they removed that prerequisite requirement, so you could go and take the actual concentration without having a CISP. I'm kind of mixed feelings on that because I did it the old way, and I kind of feel there's value in having a CISP first before you deep dive into those concentrations. But I kind of also understand why ISC Square is trying to open up the field, if you will. And so I'm on two sides of that. But back to the point I'm bringing up, what are your thoughts on, degrees, certifications, and experience? Like if you're advising a company that's trying to, increase their talent pool or at least increase the hiring pool that they're looking at from the level one positions like help desk, service desk, up to management level positions, and they're struggling because maybe the HR set really stringent criteria.
Oh.
What would be your guidance to that or those type of organizations?
First of all, think outside the box. People coming into this industry can come with various backgrounds. Actually, my BA is in biology. Why? Because I was convinced before that coffee break, even after that coffee break, I was absolutely convinced I was going to go to medical school. That was the plan. I started my degree because I said, okay, let's save up time. I'll do the 3 years biology degree and then I'll only have 4 years of med school. That was the idea. For many years, I didn't use that background in biology until I started working in the biotech industry and HMOs and things like that. So it did serve me at a later point. But I see people coming into this industry with various backgrounds. I actually had one of my favorite stories is a woman I met. She was actually in recruiting. She was in HR, she was a recruiter, and she worked for a cyber recruiting agency. So she was working with that talent, and she would see people half her age getting twice as much as she was getting. And she said, May, I want in. I like this industry. I want to do something about it. And I actually sent her down the professional training route. And she did everything. I can't say she didn't take any shortcuts. She started with basic help desk sort of system networking administrator training. And then she went on to cyber practitioner training. And then she started working in a SOC while learning the CISO training, which is 290 hours. So she probably spent about 2 years building her career path. And today, moving on, something like, I don't know, 6, 7 years later, she's a CISO. And she can
Excellent.
hold her own, and she has a CISSP, and she's an incredible example of looking outside the box, looking at talent that you usually wouldn't consider. I mean, why would you consider someone coming from HR? And yeah, she had to have that first person who would believe in her and would give her that chance as a SOC analyst. And I think that's what we should do as an industry. We and I keep talking about DEI, not for DEI's sake. I am all for diversity and inclusion, and I think we need more people to come into this industry. But I'm not even talking about that side of things. I'm talking about the practical side. Is that when we look at it, our adversaries, they are very diverse. We have men, we have women, we have young people, we have old people, we have people from different backgrounds, from different education, from different cultures. And if we want to have any chance of defending against those adversaries, we need to have that diverse point of view in our teams.
Of course. One of the things I've been happy to see, because, I speak at a lot of conferences and events around the world. And what I'm beginning to see more and more of is the influx of just strong, powerful women leaders in cybersecurity. Whereas if you think about maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was predominantly a male-based industry. And to see that, cyber doesn't care about ethnicity, doesn't care about gender, it doesn't care about any of those things. It cares about what capability that you could bring to an organization, and it starts with what's in your brain. It has nothing to do with physical strength or the DNA. It has to do with your knowledge and capabilities that you can bring to an organization, and that's why I think cyber is one of those is probably one of my. It's of course it's my industry that I love, but I love cyber because it has lots of opportunities. It's ever changing, so it stays current and relevant. It's what advances businesses. It allows businesses to operate and to do it in a secure manner. Um, May Another question I have on the list is, obviously, your advisory boards, your the work that you do in industry, and of course, obviously with ISC Square. What motivates you though? I mean, I know we talked about how you started with the coffee break, but day to day, I mean, when people say, "Hey," it's almost like there's always the phones ringing, there's always the threats, the new things we got to stay on top of. And there's been a thing that's in industry since, I guess, the pandemic, called the IT cyber burnout, that's happened to a lot of professionals, where they're working these longer hours, sometimes having to work into the evenings and weekends, and people are experiencing burnout. So, what is something that motivates you with the work you do?
Start with why. That's one of my favorite books of all time. From Simon Sinek wrote it, and he has a TED Talks for those who
Wonderful,
don't
wonderful.
have, yeah, those who don't have the energy to read a book, just watch his TED Talk. And it all comes down to passion, because cybersecurity is not an easy career. When people tell me I want to go into cybersecurity, my first question is why? And if they tell me money within like the first three sentences, I'm like, dude, there are easier ways to make money. This is not an easy industry. You talked about long hours and weekends and everything. Yesterday, I started my day at 8:30 p.m. 8:30 a.m. I was already in the office. I left the office at 10:30 p.m. with about 2 hours break in the middle. I wasn't tired. I was happy because I was talking to students and I was creating content and I was researching something that I'm very passionate about for that talk in 2 weeks. So I had fun. And for me, it's all about having fun. It's all about finding your passion and finding your why. And your why can change over time. And I think the most important thing when you build a career, and it's probably true for any industry, but I only know the cyber industry, so I can't talk about anything else. But you have to course correct. What was right for me 10 years ago isn't right for me now. And 10 years ago, if you would have asked me, I would have told you that the ultimate goal is to be a CISO. And then I became a CISO and I held CISO roles in multiple organizations and I had great fun. But at some point, it wasn't just burnout. I just realized that my heart wasn't into it anymore. It was doing more of the same. Yes, in another company, in another industry, and it's fun. And so it's always interesting, but it felt sort of repetitive. So I realized that I had to change what I do within the cybersecurity realm. And I had to find that new why that will keep me happy, that will make me motivated. For me, it's all about content creation and research and making a true impact about keeping people safe in the online world. It started with security awareness, and today I'm talking especially to boards and to companies. And my doctorate, for example, is focused on how can cybersecurity positively impact the business and bottom line. And you talked about it before. We're advisors. And I think one of the biggest challenges as advisors, and I'll talk about the CISO role in that aspect. When we come as CISOs or as risk managers, and we come up with, we're looking at a very narrow thing. We're looking at the cybersecurity risk. And unfortunately, I talk to CISOs all over the world, and when I ask them what your company does, maybe they know. Who are your competitors? Maybe they'll put one or two names. What are your biggest money earners? I have no idea. And unfortunately, as long as we don't have those business conversations and we don't understand what it is we're protecting, I don't think we'll ever get there. And that is sort of the maturity that I expect us as an industry to go through and give positive impact on the bottom line, not just spend money and be the department of no.
Yes. That's a great point you bring up because, I've been in some discussions recently with people because, this is an election year in the United States and there's a lot of political discussions in many offices and chat groups. And one of the points I brought up to a recent chat group I was in that was very heated at one point. But I said, it's funny how a politician is a career path now. Used to be years ago, back in like the 50s and prior, you was either a lawyer, you was a doctor, you had another career before you decided to go into public service and being a politician. And we lost that over the years. It became to where it's a full-fledged from right out of high school to college, you are a politician. That is your career path. And in cyber, I think that that's a danger for a lot of folks that, go into cyber that didn't come from another career path. And they're, like you said, the no department. But think the point is that we talk a lot about how our senior leadership needs to have some foundational cybersecurity training and awareness given, which is absolutely true. But you bring up the other side of the coin, which is cyber professionals need to have that business education, at least to a foundational level, to understand what the business is trying to do, what their mission statement really is. Learn about the products, learn about competitors, because there's one thing when you're looking at the ocean of cyber threats, right? It could get scary if you want to look at it as an ocean. But when you look in terms of what the business is trying to do within that ocean of threats, you can refine and hone in on what really matters and kind of remove what I call fear bias, which impacts a lot of professionals as well as executives, because what limited knowledge you have may limit your perspective. So by getting more in tune with what the business, how it operates and what it's trying to do in industry, like you said, learning the business side will help you refine your perspective and realign what the priorities of threats are and so forth. Because I think that's what alienates the cyber, security folks from the business folks, is because they're both trying to do the right thing, right? They both have their
Mm-hmm.
goals, but we have to learn from each other. We have to learn, they need to learn about cyber fundamentals and we need to learn about the business. So absolutely 110% behind you on that statement there. A lot of folks that, one, I have mentored, oh goodness, in 20 plus years. I've been doing this for 32 years now, and I've mentored a lot of folks from different career paths, people in nursing, teaching, or, people that was a receptionist at a company that said, hey, I want to change my career. Mostly militaries, because I've worked with the military for a long time, and I help a lot of folks transition out the uniform into wonderful cybersecurity careers. And it's funny, I was just having another discussion yesterday when someone asked me, what's your pass rate? I said, for those that I personally coach, mentor, train, I have 100% pass rate. And they were like, there's just no way. I said, no, everybody that fully takes everything that I say, because usually I have levels. Like now what I do is when someone will get referred to me by a colleague or someone that I help get into cyber, and they'll tell someone, hey, I'm gonna give you this guy's email them. First thing I tell them is certified in cybersecurity. I say, hey, here's a link to their million certified in cybersecurity. Go get that first and then come back to me. Now, I'll be honest, about out of every 10 people that get referred to me and I give them that first step, only maybe 1 of 10 will come back, because
Exactly.
a lot of people will say things, but they don't have the drive and the fortitude and follow through to go through it. So my new measure is start with certified cybersecurity. Once you get that, then I'll start working with you to build you up from there. But with that being said, what would you recommend if someone was watching this saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and register for certified cybersecurity. So let's say now, I'm going to put that link below for anyone watching this. You could just click the link for certified cybersecurity, get that cert. But May, what would you say would be some websites, YouTube channels, or other resources that people can go to get more information? Let's say they already have certified in cybersecurity. What would be step number 2 that you would recommend to anyone watching this?
Get immersed in the industry. That's always my networking is probably the biggest changer in a career. Honestly, when I moved to the UAE, when my husband got the opportunity to move to the UAE, and he came up to me and he said, you won't believe it, but you'll probably say no. And even before he finished the sentence, I was like, hell yes. Like, are you serious? You have a career, you have a company, you're the CEO, you have this network. Like, yeah, well, the only way I know how to grow is to challenge yourself and go outside your comfort zone. And he said, but what will you do there? I have no idea. I'll figure it out. And I did. And I didn't figure it out because I'm that amazing. It's not about that. It's because I knew I had the skills to reach out to the network, to get to know people, to build those communities around me, and find my next role and roles. And today I even work at today I work for the last year and a half. I've been working in the US, although I'm based in the UAE, because it's all about networking. So I would say for anyone listening, get immersed in the industry. There are so many free webinars and conferences and networking events all around you. Just search, open Google, because I don't know who's listening and where they're based. Open Google, look for your local communities, look for ISC2 chapters, ISACA chapters, I always forget, ISAA or ISSA.
Yes.
I never remember well how it goes, but look for their chapters. Most of these events are free and they're worldwide, and you can join those networks. You can go to universities, a lot of universities all over the world. B-Sides is a great conference that you have. I don't even know how many cities around the world now have B-Sides, but it's great. So those are things that I would do. I would get immersed in the content itself. There are so many podcasts, and of course I'll mention my podcast, Cybermania. Yeah, I have to, but in Cybermania, just like this podcast, I host people from all over the world, from different industry, from cybersecurity, but from different regions and from different industries and from different roles. And suddenly you have that, and I think podcasts in general, it's one of my favorite mediums of all time. And you can get insights from people that you won't necessarily have access to in your day-to-day work. So I think that's a great tool to use. And just join the community, ask people around you, because it's very different. I mean, I can recommend specific books or specific courses, but it really depends what you want to do. If you want to be, let's say, if your dream is to be a penetration tester and I'll send you to do an MBA, not so much. But if your dream is to be a CISO and I'll send you to do CTFs, again, not so much. Though I don't regret my very weird career and all the twists and turns that I had over the years. But the reason I had so many twists and turns is because I didn't have anyone to guide me. And I don't think 20 something years ago, there weren't any clear career path. No one was talking about the personality side, the passion side. Like my personality is completely wrong for pen testing, which is why I didn't like it. I did it, but I didn't like it. I never enjoyed it. I mean, it was fun for the first like 2 hours, no, for the first 3 months, but that was about it. I found it very boring, but that's absolutely true for my personality. One of my best friends is a penetration tester, and he said if I'll have to do an audit like you do or sit on a board meeting, I would kill myself. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
I hear that. You know, it's funny when I was in my early 30s and I was, I was really early into, helping other people. It was just people in my office that, like in defense contracting, they had this thing called DoD 8570, which was a chart of certifications for different level roles. And they were enforcing this condition where you had to have this certain sort of baseline certification to have your position. And so there was a weird time where a lot of people were at risk of losing their jobs that they had been working for years and now needed all of a sudden to meet this baseline certification requirement. So back then, I would have like 20, 30 people in the office come to me, Jim, we know that you seem to have no problem passing certs. And I would hear it all the time, like, oh, you're just great at answering, passing certifications. I said, no, I'm excellent at answering problems, finding solutions to problems. So I
Exactly.
was back then I was teaching this kind of like what I call now my method of breaking down problems and solving them. And I would teach this to people, and then they would go and pass anything from Security Plus to CISP with like super ease. And it was funny because then people would tell me, Jim, you should be an instructor. You should, be like a SANS instructor or work for IC course instructor. And I said, no, I would die a slow death because if I had to teach the stuff like I'm teaching you one-on-one to a classroom week after week, the same stuff over and over, I would lose my mind because I knew that about myself. I needed to always have something dynamic and something to study and grow. And so I said I would die a slow death as an instructor. To find myself now, 10 plus years later, I'm doing just that, but I'm not doing it in a classroom per se. I published this book last year. So this is CISP in
Mm-hmm.
10 days, and I have one called CISP in 30 days. But what's funny is like, as I come up with better methods, so a year ago, I had 5 officers. I had a lieutenant, a captain, and 3 majors. And then one of the 3 majors had just failed the CISP once, but the other 4 were going to take it for the first time. Of that group, only the lieutenant was cyber Like he had already some great knowledge behind him and experience, but the rest were not that strong in cyber. So I said, guys, I have an approach to CISP. If you literally do exactly what I'm going to tell you, I believe you could pass it in 10 days. And so they all followed me every day. I would have little one-on-one sessions with them, but they all passed in 10 days. They all set their
Amazing.
certification date. And once that proved the approach, I published in a book, and now other people have now found that they could do CISP. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm going to take the next 6 months to a year to study," and nothing's wrong
Oh,
with
I don't.
that. But
No, I don't
this is
believe
what
in that.
yeah, but this is what I tell people. When they say 6 months to a year, I tell them, are you married? Do you have children? Because life gets in the way. Even if you're not married, if you're single and have no other family obligations when you get home at the end of the day, life still gets in the way. There'll be work projects, a transition project, or you got to travel for this, and it's going to disrupt your study. So I tell people, usually you want to do 90 days or less. That's usually what I advocate. I say 90 days or less. I would preferably say 30 days because you can learn most bodies of knowledge, regardless of the certification, what it is. In about 30 days, if you really focus your weekends and nights, you could take on a certain 30 days. I usually analogy I use this as tea, but I'll tell people it's like a bottle of water. You're going to fill it in with some knowledge that you're going to read. Listen to audiobooks,
Hmm.
you're going to ingest knowledge. And what's going to happen is every week that passes is like poking a needle, another hole in the bottle. And as if you don't keep it fresh and current, because here's the thing, a certification will test your knowledge within a knowledge base, right? Let's take CISP, it's got 8 domains. You could do all this 30 days or however many weeks of study, but what's going to happen is over time, you're going to slowly, your brain doesn't retain 100%,
Yeah.
unless you have what's called a memory palace or an or eidetic photorealistic memory. If you're one of the rare few of those people, but if you're like the majority of us, you're going to read a bunch of stuff, learn a bunch of theory and foundational stuff. But what's going to happen is by the time you wait 6 months later to take the test, you're going to be struggling, confused, trying to remember what you read that one time months ago. But I tell people, ingest, just soak yourself, immerse yourself in the body of knowledge, and then within 30 days to no more than 90, go take the test. And there's multiple approaches to it, but I do know that I think I saw on your LinkedIn that you're working on a CISP course. Is that correct?
Well, I'm an authorized instructor. I have been for over 10 years.
Mhm.
I hate the 5 days boot camps. I always said that because I don't think anyone retains any knowledge from it.
Not in
They
five
learn how to
days.
pass the exam. That's great. But to be honest, it's absolutely terrible, both for the students and especially for me as an instructor for 5 days in straight, doing 8 hours, 9 hours, teaching a day. No, thank you. Did it once. I'm not going to do it again. But I used to do it over a month, twice a week, 2 domains a week, 5 hours each session, 30 days, you're done. Unfortunately, what I've found over the years is it's enough that some students will have a single cyber incident during that time, and they will completely lose track of
Yeah.
everything that goes on. So what I've started doing about, I think it was probably about 2 or 3 years ago, is I do one domain a week, one session, 5 hours. You can find 5 hours to go through a domain. If you can't find 5 hours, then then go to a time management course. That's a different story. That's not cybersecurity. So I do one session a week, and every week we tackle a specific domain. By the end of that week, you know that domain. You're not going to touch it for the next 6, 7 weeks. Although every week I remind them of other concepts again. And the one thing that I added to all my boot camps, no matter where I do them, and not just with CIS, but CIS was the first one, is I added a Q&A marathon. So I take various sample questions. And I think that for a lot of people, it's just getting into the head of how a certification goes. And I think from my experience, people who fail the CISP are usually the more technical oriented people because they take a question and they start thinking, oh, how will I implement it? Which port should I open? How will I do it? Which one should I use? Should I use Cisco? Should I use Juniper? That's not the question, dude. The question is about managing it, not about doing it. It's not a practitioner exam. It's a managerial exam. I think that is a big challenge for a lot of people. And that's why I do that Q&A marathon to try and get people to review. We usually review about 100 questions together. I pick the nastiest ones I can find, like the ones that are really like, what is that? What do you mean? Like you have to read it 3 times to even understand what it means. That's exactly what I want them to do. I want them to tackle those hard questions and learn how to find those key words, because sometimes even not paying attention, not seeing which is the least and not paying attention to the word least, that's huge. Now,
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with cybersecurity. It's answering questions. And here again, I see the difference between people who come with some sort of education and, as far as I'm concerned, have a degree in music. I really don't care what, but if you know how to study, and it could be anything, it could be programming, music, art, I really don't care. Then you know how to study, you know how to retain information, you know how to produce information, you know how to review questions. And I think those are skills that a lot of cybersecurity professionals, unfortunately, don't have, especially it depends where in the world. But for example, I originally come from Israel, and most security professionals in Israel grew up in the IDF and started in the IDF and sort of grew from there. So a lot of people, by the time they finished their service, already had a career path. So they never went back to do their degree or professional training or certifications. And then 15 years later, they wanted to take certification because they needed at some point to get to that next
They
level in
should
their
have. They could have
career.
did it earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, and they haven't studied like official studies in so long that it's very hard for them to come back.
Yeah.
So I think those are
We
skills.
So, one of the things that when I mentor a lot of folks, and again, I don't want to go into a long story about how my one of my first books I published on Amazon, but for the past 10 plus years, I've helped over 100,000 people get into cybersecurity around the world. In fact, one of my ebooks is the most pirated cybersecurity book on all the file sharing sites. But in that book, you mentioned about going through questions, right? And when I talk to folks, first thing when they say, "Well, I can't do cyber," I'll say, "Can you read and can you comprehend? If you could do those two things, you could do anything." And but what I do is I quickly get students taking these questions and practice and getting prepared for the exam. And these are two methods which I'll share for anyone watching this podcast. So I'm going to save you the buying the book. It comes down to really two methods because you mentioned keywords. That's one of my methods, and language, positive and negative. When you talk about most, least, best, those keywords in a question. So
Hmm.
those are all methods of mine that are what I call more of the easy ones. But the two methods that really help students that I mentor, one is called broad brushstroke. So you mentioned most people that fail these certification exams in cyber are usually technical, right? Come with an engineering, analyst, technical background. And so what I do is called a broad brushstroke. And so what the broad brushstroke does is in a question, it's going to give you a scenario, XYZ company, and this is the problem they're facing. What the technical person is going to look for the very detailed, specific, super ironclad, gold-plated answer, right? And so, like the example I'll use is, what should every company have? And the choices would be like antivirus, whitelisting, a security plan, and then IDS, IPS, firewalls. It has a long, perfect answer. But when it says every company doesn't have to be a Fortune 500. It could be a mom and pop bakery, local bakery in town. That's a business too, but they can't
Hmm.
afford an IDS, IPS, and all those
And
technologies.
they
But
don't need it either.
they don't need it either. But a technical person will go for that answer every time. Whereas in that mix of answers, one was just called a security plan, a plan
Hmm.
that's tailored for your operations and your business. And so that's called broad brushstroke. Now, what the security plan means, the broad brushstroke method is, well, security plan is very broad and generic, but can all of those answers fit inside of it? There's your broad brushstroke. And so a lot of people that do what I call the coin flip on their test, they're struggling between A and B as the two choices, and they're
Hmm.
flipping the coin and then they're changing the answers. I said, get rid of that dilemma. Is one choice, can the one fit inside the other? And if it covers it, that's your answer. And that's about, honestly, 50% of my students say that is what saved them on their exams.
Exactly.
Now I'll give one more for everyone watching. So this is really the crown jewel of my certification approach. It's called the CIA method. So the major bedrock of security controls is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's the triad of every cybersecurity framework that's on the planet. The problem is Don Parker back in the 70s and 60s, he had came up with the hexadaddy attitude and he added privacy, but there's 9 security principles, which is covered in a cert by ISC squared called the ISSMP.
Yeah, and a PS.
It's also the foundation of the NSA's security engineering program. So they look at 9 security principles and everything that they engineer and design as a solution. So it's very important to know that there's the triad is the first 3, but there's another 6 controls. But for purposes of most cybersecurity exams, they're only going to really focus on the triad. Some I've seen do non-repudiation authentication. They'll go 5, maybe 6 on the list. But generally
Seven.
speaking, when you read the question and you get the keyword of what the problem is, what is that problem a threat to? Is it a threat to confidentiality, integrity, availability? Now you label your answers the same way. What are those answers solving? Is it a C? Is it an I? Is it an A? 9 times out of 10, you'll find that the problem and
Mm-hmm.
solution will match. So let's say you have a 4 choice multiple choice, you'll have A, I, and a C. And if you have a problem with firewalls, generally that's confidentiality. That will be your answer. Now, of course, take this with a grain of salt that you need to know some knowledge and context to put behind that selection. So every now and then someone will say, hey, I ran 100 practice questions and here's 10 questions where that didn't work for me. I say, yeah, but read the context of the problem. You missed something here. So again, it works about 9 out of 10 times. Again, I have 100% pass rate, but for anyone watching, I just given you 2 of the best methods to approach any kind of question with. Um, what I like to do, May, if I could, is I like to do a speed round with any of my guests where I ask just a couple of questions that are just there's no right or wrong answer. It's just silly questions meant to give some levity because we're talking certifications, we're talking cyber, we're talking all this stuff that most people by this point, some people are starting to nod off and fall asleep. So I like to do something fun. So I'm going to ask just a couple questions and just answer as fast as possible and no right or wrong answer. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, first one. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No, it's disgusting.
Good.
Sorry.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, Star Wars.
Star Wars. Okay.
Star Wars.
Um, Cake or pie?
Pie.
Pie. Okay. What type of pie?
Apple pie.
Apple pie. All right, great.
Of
Great
course.
answers. What is the favorite book that you've read?
Ooh, I have to pick one?
Just one.
Well, I did
It
mention
could be
Simon
a
Sinek
recent
Start With
book or it
Why.
could be your favorite book of all time.
Oh, my favorite. Oh, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, obviously. Has to be.
42.
Yeah, I'm 42 now. So, by the way, I'm not going to age. I decided now that I'm 42, I decided that I'm going to stay 42 because it's the ultimate answer to like the universe and
It
everything.
is.
So I can't get anything wrong this year.
Okay.
I
What
hope.
are some personal projects outside? I know you do all this advisory board work and you do a lot of content generation, but what's a personal project that you like to share to anyone watching and then the website and or socials that they can follow on it?
Ooh, okay. So I actually did put it on LinkedIn yesterday, so I can share it. That scams, hacking, and cybersecurity, the ultimate guide for online safety and privacy. Apparently, it's an important keyword in Amazon. So it's coming out. It's my book, and it's coming out next month. Yes, I'm very excited because being a perfectionist, I fired 2 translators for getting it wrong originally, and then I had to rewrite a few sections because time has passed since I published it in Hebrew at the time. So it's something that I'm very excited about because when I was working on this book, I tried to create a book that is really for everyone. And that's a huge challenge because being a security professional, I could write, it's easy for me to write a book for other security professionals. And that's one type of book. And it's also pretty easy for me to create a book for the general public. But trying to find a book that will combine both and people from the industry will find compelling and not boring. And on the other side, people with zero knowledge will get the foundations that they need to stay safe online. That's not easy. So I actually worked with a beta group of over 100 readers at the time, and I had everyone there from cybersecurity professionals to teachers to people who describe themselves as technophobe. I actually asked my publisher that my editor will be someone that is a safe proclaimed technophobe, and they gave me this incredible editor. Her name is Helena, and she called me up. I sent her the manuscript on, I think it was Thursday or Friday morning, and comes Saturday evening, and she calls me, can we talk? And I'm like, is it really that bad? And she said, no, I'm just sending my laptop with my son to for him to back up because I got so paranoid because of your book and just wanted to send you everything before. So, okay, apparently it worked. And it was a great success in Israel, and now it's coming out in English, and I'm very, very excited about it. So that's one huge passion project. And the other passion project, well, there's a small project, which is the website and the blog that I've been promising myself for years and years and years that I'll actually do. So now it's done. and it's actually up and running already. So I'll send you the link and we can share
Thank
that.
you.
And last but not least, next week I'll be in New York for Cybertech, which is very one of my favorite conferences. And we're launching there Cyber Labs, which is a training facility based in New York for in-person training with a very different approach, not just getting people certified with all due respect to certification. And we just had half an hour conversation about certifications, but actually giving people the skill sets that they need for different roles in cybersecurity, trying to help mitigate that huge work gap that we see.
Awesome. Well, definitely send me all those links because I'm going to put them in the description below. Before we go, you mentioned this book's soon to come out. Do you mind giving one or two little pieces and tips of advice or warnings to people from that book, if you wouldn't mind?
Oh, I would love that. So basically, it all comes back to social engineering. And social engineering is the art of manipulation. It's getting someone to do something that they're not supposed to do. Now, social engineers, just like marketers, by the way, use the basic human traits like fear and greed and curiosity and urgency to get us to do something now without thinking. And in the last few years, you actually see a lot of a lot of marketing ads doing exactly the same, and a lot of scammers doing that, offering this great offer, time limited offer, whatever. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go shopping, when I go to, I don't know, to Marks and Spencer's and I walk around with a cart, I never had a salesperson come up to me and tell me, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, you've been here for 15 minutes. We're taking everything out of the cart."
Yep.
But in the internet they do it all the time. So this time pressure is usually not real. So I think the biggest advice I can give people is be more mindful whenever you see something. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Even if it's not too good to be true, even if it's something that does make sense, wait, is it something that you really want? Do you actually need it? Do your due diligence. And I actually just came back from a trip to the Philippines that started with me being convinced that I was being social engineered because I saw this ad for one of the airlines with an incredible offer, and I was convinced this is a scam. And I spent the next hour or so reviewing it from every single angle I could find, checking the history of this URL, everything, until I was actually convinced that this is a real ad and a real promotion. But today it's getting harder and harder to pick up what is too good to be true and what is true. So just be more vigilant. And if you're
Vigilant.
not sure, reach out to someone. I'm always there on LinkedIn. You can always tag me on
It's
LinkedIn
like,
and I'll be happy to
May, what
help.
do you think of this? Is this a scam or
Yeah.
not?
And I get hundreds of these every week. And to be honest, I love it. In Israel, I have a cybersecurity group on Facebook with 25,000 members called Think Safe Cyber. And we have loads of volunteers doing exactly that. We review links, we review ads, we review emails and tell people. And we don't just tell people, oh, this is scam, this is not scam. We also tell them this is scam because these are the warning signs. This is what you should have noticed. This is how you run a who is query. These are important links that you should know. And all of that is obviously covered in the book, how you review things. Why is it important to keep your password safe? What are the benefits of using multi-factor authentications? What are the benefits and pitfalls of using password managers? How to safely browse, how to keep your privacy. And a lot of people think that we sort of lost that war. I don't think we lost that war. There are things that you can find a lot of information about me on social media, but there are a lot of things that no one will know and no one knows, and I keep it very private because it's no one's business.
Yeah. I think you brought up a good thing about the human element of cybersecurity, especially with social engineering and phishing attacks and so forth. In the past few years, we've seen an increase in phishing attacks where these emails will just go out saying, "Here's your invoice for whatever product," and of course, the people may be like, "I didn't buy anything," and there's a PDF attached. They open it up, or Word document, even worse, and next thing they know, they've got either ransomware attack or some type of malware loaded on their machine. Because first question you ask is someone saying, "Hey, here's your invoice." If you didn't shop at that store, didn't buy anything, check your bank apps first to see if you do have a charge
Oh yeah.
because obviously that's a trusted source. Check your bank first. Don't just click a random email
And if it's
attached.
from your bank and it has a link, don't click that
Don't
link.
click
Go
it.
to Google, write the name of your bank, go to their website.
Call their customer
Don't
service.
and don't think that you remember, because let's say Bank of America. Do you really remember the URL for Bank of America? Is it bankofamerica.com,
Or
America Bank,
BOA.com or some
BOA? I
variation.
don't know. And I actually tried to remember what's my bank's URL, and I was like, I'm not sure.
Well, and
Honestly,
it
I'm
gets
not sure.
tricky because, when you teach people to check like an email header to see what the reply to what
No.
the email address is, they're
Oh, the
getting very sophisticated with, let's say it's Bank of America dot something dot, AI or dot IO, and you wouldn't
you said
at face value.
exactly.
But even with
And
logos and
social media
icons,
ads
the
and social media
websites,
ads
yeah,
today on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, you see loads of them offering, and some of them are so good. I've actually seen, I'm here in the UAE, we have all the Ferrari World and Water World and Sea World and whatever, and there's now a huge campaign around that, and it's done, to be honest, kudos to those scammers. They did a very they worked hard on this campaign. They scraped the original website, created their own version and multiple websites. It's not just one, and they create very compelling ads. And the name is almost exactly the same. Instead of SeaWorld Abu Dhabi.ae or whatever, it's SeaWorld dash Abu dash UAE dot whatever com. Everything looks spot on.
oh
It's
yeah,
very hard. So if it's too good to be true and suddenly they offer you 70% off on your annual pass, no, it's not true.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
Sorry
this,
to ruin it for you
so
guys.
be vigilant, do a little bit of searching and double checking with Google and authorize authoritative services. So again, be careful out there. With AI, the advancement of AI and the level of sophistication, they make things look as real and close to the real thing as possible. So take it with a grain of salt. Just always check before you put in your credit card information and potentially lose money, or worst case, have your
Your
machine encrypted.
identity.
So, May, I know we're wrapping up here because I know your time is valuable, but all of the websites you've mentioned, social media links, provide all that to me and more. Anyone watching, don't be afraid. It's going to be in the links in the description below.
We promise
But
it's legit.
this legit. So, what would be the primary social platform for people to follow you and the great work that you do in the industry?
Mm. Well, for professionals, I would say probably LinkedIn. And I actually opened up an Instagram account a couple of months ago. I'm just starting out. I'm just working on it because I realized that if I actually want to help the general public and people who are not technologically oriented to get those cybersecurity tips that they need to stay safe and to keep their loved ones safe online, that's the platform to be. So I'm working on it. Don't laugh at me. I have like, I don't know, probably 150 followers, but it will get there. I'm sure it will. We'll just have
Wonderful.
to spend the time on it.
Well, May, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's extremely valuable. I would like to leave an open invitation for you to come back to the podcast, maybe in season 3, which will kick off in January of next year. But thank you so much for your time. And I'm excited for your book to come out. So please send that link to me also, because I would love to add it to the description when it is available. I will definitely love to buy a copy, and maybe we'll talk about it next time you're on.
Fantastic. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Well, have a wonderful day, May. Thank you so much.
You too.